And let me now bring in retired General David Petraeus, former commander of U.S. Central Command and former director, of course, of the CIA. Now, General, you've been inside the room during situations like this. What kind of conversations are happening at the White House and the Pentagon right now?
Well, there's the big question of attribution, Gabe, as was mentioned. And until that's crystal clear and you're certain about that, obviously, laying out various options is difficult. I'm sure that the Pentagon and Central Command are combining to identify a set of options. If it's this particular group that has pinpointed, say, Kataib Hezbollah, which we also know well from our time in Iraq, needless to say, or if it is perhaps another group, then what is the relationship with the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force? What role did they play in this, if there is one identified? And then, of course, what are the objectives that we're seeking to achieve? In addition to sending a message that this is completely unacceptable, it shouldn't be done again, do we want to degrade and to reduce the capacity of this particular group? And do you consider going directly to the source of the trouble here, which is, of course, Iran, which through the Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force funds, trains, equips, in many cases directs the Shia militia in Iraq and Syria, but also, of course, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, who are disrupting freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I can't recall, Gabe, any time since 1979 when we carried out an overt airstrike inside Iran. Now, it may be that there have been some, but I just don't recall any since the aborted operation to try to rescue our hostages in Tehran. In Desert One, it got no farther. So that's what they're discussing very intensively. Of course, the action officers and so forth are in probably nonstop Zooms back and forth with Central Command, the headquarters in Tampa, the forward headquarters in Doha, outside Doha, Qatar, and then, of course, the commander on the ground in that particular region in Iraq, in Syria as well.
General, look, certainly any strike inside Iran would be hugely significant. And you mentioned some other options being considered. What are they? Because earlier this month, I asked President Biden whether the airstrikes at the time in Yemen, were they working? And he acknowledged that they weren't as a deterrent. So the question is, what other options does he have? What do you think are some of those options being considered right now?
First of all, if I could, when it comes to Yemen, I think the objective, there's a recognition that it's unlikely that they can force the Houthis to stop their operations. This is the Houthis' moment to be somebody in the neighborhood. You know, they were an insignificant element until now. This is their Saladin moment. You know, they're fighting the Crusaders kind of issue. What you can do, and what we have done, I firmly believe, is degrade their ability to continue the attacks, reduce their capacity, destroy some of the stockpiles, the radars, the launch facilities, and so forth. And if you think about that, then in the context of this response, how could you degrade? How could you reduce the capacity and the capability of these forces? Do you go after the leaders and their command and control? Where are the stockpiles? Where are the IRGC Quds Force training bases and so forth? And perhaps we go after all of those because, look, the loss of 3 soldiers is very, very significant. We've been incredibly fortunate so far because of quite good defenses to fend off all these attacks and had not lost a soldier until now, although dozens have been wounded. So this is a very significant blow, and it's going to require a very significant response, far more than a cyber attack, although there may be some non-visible actions taken as well, and perhaps something even in the covert action realm. But I think this will require multiple substantial kinetic strikes. And the big question is, do you confine them just to Syria and perhaps to Iraq, keeping in mind that the Iraq-U.S. relationship is quite fragile now? We've just started negotiations on the future presence of forces there, which the government, I think, would like to keep us there, the Iraqi government and the U.S. government, to keep an eye and pressure on the Islamic State, a Sunni extremist organization. But the Shia militias are trying to force us out to do Iran's bidding, which has always been one of their objectives, is to get us out of the region.
Yeah, General, with the death of those service members, this attack definitely feels different. But I want to ask you about Iran's role in all this? The White House has consistently said that Iran bears responsibility here because it funds these groups. But U.S. officials had previously assessed that Iran itself, that the supreme leader, did not want a wider war. What do you think about that? And how much control does Iran really have over these proxy groups?
Well, I think Iran is happy, frankly, to fight to the last Houthi, the last Hezbollah fighter, the last Hamas terrorist, and the last Iraqi Shia militia, as long as it doesn't get out of control and threaten their number one objective in life, which is, of course, to preserve their position in Iran, to preserve their power. They don't want, for example, I don't believe, to see freedom of navigation disrupted out of the Gulf, because they send 1.8 million barrels of crude oil out per day, in addition to all the other oil and natural gas that comes from the Gulf states. They don't want to get into a direct fight with the U.S. because they'll be on the losing end. But the truth is, we don't want to get into that either, because we have a lot of vulnerabilities in the region. We have a lot of U.S. citizens there, a lot of interest there. And our bases are more vulnerable to the increasing range, accuracy, and capabilities of the Iranian missile and drone fleet. So in that sense, exactly right. They don't want a wider war like that. But again, they're happy to see some of these other actions, I think, to put pressure on us, noting that, these groups don't necessarily always respond to everything that comes out of Tehran. And in fact, it's known, as an example, that Hamas apparently did not share the timing of this operation with them, and that Tehran was surprised by 10/7.
General David Petraeus, thank you so much for joining us here on Meet the Press Now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.